Thanks, Mike, if you can get us that. Remember Elisha, as he comes back to the northern part of Israel, he gets bullied by a group of kids who call him bald, make fun of him, and he cursed in the name of God, and 2 she-bears come out and mangled 42 of the children. Yay! Teaches you a lesson, I guess. It's definitely a supernatural occurrence. It wasn't supposed to happen. He used God's name to make the bears come out. It doesn't say they died, but it's not a good scene. And Elisha definitely seems to be continuing the tradition that Elijah has of doing miracles and sometimes punishing people, and at least has carte blanche to do it, it seems like. So that's kind of where we left off. Goes up to Mount Carmel, which is where Elijah also did some of his miracles, like making the fire come out and burning up the offerings against the prophets of Baal. And then he goes back to Samaria, which is the capital of the north. Again, just to remind people where we're talking about, this is where Samaria is. This is where Mount Carmel is right here, near Haifa. This little peninsula type thing right there is Mount Carmel. And he was over here, which is where Elijah went up, right on the other side of the Jordan River from Jericho. Where we're going to be reading today is primarily here on the Jordanian side of today's modern day Jordan, but in those days it was oftentimes under Israelite control. So let's read. Rosemary, if you'd be so kind as to read for us chapter 3.
Jehoram, son of Ahav, became king of Israel and Samaria in the 18th year of King Jehoshaphat of Judah, and he reigned 12 years. He did what was displeasing to the Lord, yet not like his father and mother, for he removed the pillars of Baal that his father had made. However, he clung to the sins which Jeroboam, son of Nebat, caused Israel to commit. He did not depart from them.
So, he's not good, but he's not as bad as his dad. Ahab. That's okay. No, we're gonna go over it. So he is not a good king, but he's definitely not a bad king. And what he did that was really good is he took down all the stuff of Baal, the Canaanite god, the Phoenician god. He took that stuff down. So that's really good. Now, what's weird is his mom, Jezebel, is still alive, and she worships Baal and Ashtaroth. So he didn't do what she did and what she got his dad to do. And it seems like Ahab goes back and forth. There's a couple of times when Elijah screams at him and tells him to stop worshiping Baal, that he sometimes backs down a little bit. Definitely after the prophets of Baal get killed, he seems to get religion again. So Ahab goes back and forth. But this guy, Jehoram, seems to be okay when it comes to Baal. But what he does do, right, what he does wrong, and what the Bible condemns him for, is being like Jeroboam, who was the first king of Israel, the one who separated from Judah, right, from King Rehoboam, from Solomon's son. So what is that? Rosemary, what does he do that makes him not good? What is it that he makes him do that's like Jeroboam?
So not worshiping in Jerusalem.
Yep. And my friends, that's enough.
The priests do not like that.
Yeah, that's enough, because the people who are in charge, the priests, that's their job. right? You're taking people away. You're taking people away from Jerusalem. That's their job. So needless to say, the priests who edited and wrote this Bible that we have in front of us, they don't like this guy. Now, again, he's not like his father. Everybody knows that, but he's still not good. So Jehoram or Yoram, let me just show one thing quickly so that again we can go back to our kings, our king list and our prophet list. So here is Ahav. Remember his son Ahaziah is the king for a very short period of time. How about like less than a year? So he's the one who fell down and died. And remember, Jezebel's in the background. There's Ahab. He's married to Jezebel. He's evil, but not quite as evil as his brother or his dad. So this is Yoram. They're all part of this Omrid dynasty. Omri was Ahab's father. Ahab was Ahaziah and Yoram's father. We're right here in the Bible. Elisha is the prophet. You can see Elisha and Elijah right here. There's Elijah. This is the list of prophets. This is where we are in the Bible. This is the kind of the judgment on whether they're good. This is the years that they reigned. And then again, over here, we come on over here and we can see that this is the list of the kings of Judah. So we start off here in King Jehoshaphat's time. The only thing I don't like about this chart is that it should really go down to about here, because Jehoshaphat is still king during Yoram's time. But you can see Yoram also overlaps with another guy named Yoram. There's two King Yorams, one in the north and one in the south. So Jehoshaphat has a son named Yoram. And again, all these guys are descendants of David, Solomon, now Rehoboam, his son, and these are all from the Davidic line. So up to this point, we're all in Davidic line. Now you can see Jehoshaphat is a good king. His son Yoram is not going to be, but we haven't gotten to him yet. We're still in this period right here. We're in this period and we're in this period. King Jehoshaphat and King Yoram. That's where we are. So yeah, what I don't like about this is that it should go down to about here. Yoram is Jehoshaphat overlaps with Yoram, this guy in the north. That's why it's a little confusing. That's very confusing because then there's Ahaziah and there's Ahaziah. There's definitely some overlapping names. It gets confusing. So, but this chart, if we go back to this chart, it kind of is good because it shows everything on one chart.
Is one of those areas much larger than the other, or?
Well, let me show you one quick time. Again, I'm going to show you. Here's the, whoa. Hold it a second. Let me show the map one more time. Hold it a second. I'm going to just do one more time with the map. No, it's okay. I didn't show it. Oh, that's not good. Huh. Let me try one more time. I don't know for some reason why it's not letting me share. Huh.
At a glance, it looks like it's fairly similar.
Yeah, hold it one second. Where did that, one second, let me just, the important thing that I can show you, that I should show you, is the fact that, there it is. So the northern kingdoms start here and go up here. The southern kingdom is here, Judah and Shimon. So that's kind of the break of the north and the south. And you can see the north is bigger, but the north and the southern kingdoms both have territories over on this side of the Jordan. And that's what's critical for today, because that's what we're actually going to be reading about, the fight for that area. So there, a little introduction to Yoram, the northern Yoram. And here is the story. Here it begins.
Now, King Mesha of Moab was a sheep breeder, and he used to pay as a tribute to the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. But when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So King Jehoram promptly set out from Samaria and mustered all Israel.
So, again, the Moabites are on the other side of the Jordan River. They are related to us according to the Bible. Moab is right here. There's Ammon, and there's Moab. During the time of King David and King Solomon, we make these countries vassals to us. They have to pay tribute to us. And that pretty much goes on for a good 100 years. All through Solomon's time, then through Rehoboam's time, they're paying tribute. When the kingdoms separate, north and south, that becomes an interesting situation because who really now controls those guys? Well, the Ammonites for sure are kind of north. But Moab, you can see, is right across the Jordan and the Dead Sea from the Jordan Valley from Judah. So you'd think that Judah would control Moab, but you can see that Israel here is controlling Moab. The northern kingdom is controlling Moab, which means that Israel must really have been more powerful than Judah. Because if Judah and the Davidic line were the ones who put Moab underneath their control, but now Israel is controlling it, that means something happened during the last couple hundred years, which is that Israel is now controlling these we call Transjordanian, or the other side of the Jordan River, the eastern provinces, if you will, are now under Israelite control. They're under Ahab's control. They're not under Judah's control. They're not under Jehoshaphat's control. They're under Judah's control. I mean, Israel's control. So this is an interesting thing because it shows that Israel really was very powerful. Because not only are they controlling the northern kingdom, but they're controlling stuff that was under the control of David, the Davidic line, for a couple hundred years. So that's pretty significant. The Moabites, as we said, their history goes back to Lot. They are the descendants of Lot's daughters. Moab and Ammon are the two incestual bastard children of Lot, right? That Lot's daughters sleep with him and get pregnant by him and continue his line through the Ammonites and the Moabites. Not a great start, at least according to our Bible. We don't know that they had the same story. We don't know that their origin story was anywhere like that. Maybe it was. We don't know. We don't have a lot of their texts. We do have one, and we're going to share it today. We don't have a lot of the Ammonite and Moabite texts, but we do know that they spoke a very similar language to Hebrew. You'll see why. We know that in a second. We know that they had very similar theological beliefs, though they call their gods different names. And we know that they probably did some of the same kinds of commercial ventures that we did, because they live in the same climate and the same topography. They don't have an ocean like a sea like we do. They don't have big water like we do. They're a desert, but they do have sheep, because we read that Mesha is a sheep herder, which is not exactly a great claim to fame, right? If you say that your king is a sheep breeder, it's not like saying, he's a very powerful king. He's a shepherd, but that's their thing. That's their commercial, that's their market, if you will. The Moabites, we also know, are also somewhat connected to us because King David's great grandmother was a Moabite, Ruth. So the Moabites are not only not all bad, they're not all wicked, and they're not all kind of messed up, because Ruth was a good Moabite, and therefore David is part Moabite, which means that all of his line, all his descendants are part Moabite too. But that doesn't mean that they can't go to war against us and vice versa. It also doesn't mean that their ways are tolerated by us, if you will. But we do have control over them, at least up till the time of Mesha, which was what we just read. Mesha rebelled. When Ahab died, he saw a vacuum, right? And so when Ahab dies, Moab rebels, Mesha rebels, and So what does Ahab's son do? Maybe his brother didn't do it, but he did. And remember, his brother's not in power for very long. He got injured right away, if you will. Not a good reign. But he has enough time, enough power, put his army together and says, hey, we're going to take back Moab. Go take back Moab. Can't have these guys separating from us. They got to pay. So here's what happens.
At the same time, he sent this message to King Jehoshaphat of Judah. The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you come with me to make war on Moab? He replied, I will go. I will do what you do. My troops shall be your troops. My horses shall be your horses. And he asked, which route shall we take? Jehoram replied, the road through the wilderness of Edom.
So that's why we're showing the map a little bit, so that you can have a visualization of what's happening here. So what do we know here? Joram asks Jehoshaphat, hey, will you join in my war against Moab? Remember, because they sometimes fight against each other, the kingdoms. They don't always get along. Definitely during the times of Asa and Baasha, they were fighting, they were killing each other. But now there seems to be a good peace between them. And not only that, they have an alliance. Now, it doesn't say what Jehoshaphat here is getting out of it, but we'd assume that Jehoshaphat is getting some pay out of this too. A little bit of money. Maybe he's going to get some tribute too. So they say, when we go to war, we're going to go through Edom. We're going to attack through the south. So that means that Israel has to travel, the armies of Israel have to travel down below the Dead Sea, and they're going to come up from the south into the north. So instead of attacking from the north like this, they're going to come up like this, which means that the Israel armies need to really get permission from Judah, because they're going to march all the way down through Judah to come back up around here. So he's got to get his buy-in, at least to let him pass through. But that's where it says through the wilderness of Edom. Now remember, Edom is also a separate country, a separate nation, if you will, and they're also paying tribute. But they seem to be paying tribute to Judah. They seem to be under Judah's authority, if you will. But let's take a look at what happens. So we're going to come in, that's the way we're going to attack.
So the king of Israel, the king of Judah, and the king of Edom set out, and they marched for 7 days until they rounded the tip of the Dead Sea, and there was no water left for the army or for the animals that were with them. Alas, cried the king of Israel, the Lord has brought these 3 kings together only to deliver them into the hands of Moab.
So we can see that Edom got involved in this war too. So maybe again, Edom and Judah are promised a little piece of the battle, right? Because the Edomites also are joining this battle. Now they have their own king, but the king seems to be again under the control of Judah, and they get his buy-in too. But of course, the problem is by the time they get to Moab, they are out of water, which is not what you want to have happen to your army. They have a problem. And so we know right away they have a problem. Now you can make the argument part of the problem is they got too many soldiers. Did they need to have this many soldiers? Well, I guess they didn't have a choice. They're marching through these other places, Israel, and so they have to bring these guys along because they're going to war with their permission, with their cooperation. So this army has to all get together. So it's a big army, 3 kings, it says, and now they're out of water. So here's what happens.
But Jehoshaphat said, isn't there a prophet of the Lord here, through whom we may inquire of the Lord? One of the courtiers of the king of Israel spoke up and said, Elisha, son of Shaphat, who poured water on the hands of Elijah, is here.
And there's Elisha. Elisha pops up in the crowd. Well, Elisha, this is Elisha's time, right? This is Elijah's gone, and we don't forget Elijah, right? Oh, but Elijah, his assistant, is here, right? So they don't, they don't forget it. We don't forget about Elijah. he's still very much in the shadow of his mentor, his teacher. So here's what happens.
The word of the Lord is with him, said Jehoshaphat. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. Elisha said to the king of Israel, what have you to do with me? Go to your father's prophets or your mother's prophets. But the king of Israel said, don't say that, for the Lord has brought these three kings together only to deliver them into the hands of Moab.
So Elisha's reaction to the king of Israel when he comes to him is, why don't you go ask your mom and dad's prophets? Why don't you go to the prophets of Baal?
Hey,
Wow.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
isn't it interesting how the kings went to Elisha, right? Don't you normally summon people to them?
Yeah. Right. So it shows you the power that Elisha had. Definitely in the scheme of things, they're coming to him. First of all, it's interesting that Jehoshaphat, right? Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah tells the king of the north, hey, don't you have a prophet? So it's like he knows about him, because he says he doesn't say, how about Elisha? Jehoshaphat doesn't say that, but he knows that there is, right? And then it says one of the courtiers says, yeah, it's Elisha, Elijah's guy. Oh, and then Jehoshaphat then pops up with, oh, that's the guy. That's the one the word of the Lord is with. So it's almost like he wanted him to say that in the first place, or maybe he didn't remember his name. I don't know. Maybe Jehoshaphat didn't remember Elisha by name, but he goes, that's the guy. That's the guy. And so, so it says that they all go down with him. So it's definitely Jehoshaphat who's rounding him up, riling him up, getting him to do it. And they do. They go down to him. They go to Elisha to get his feedback, right? To tell him what's going to happen to us. And again, his response is completely snarky. It's completely, dismissive of King Yoram. He goes, go ask your prophets, the ones that your family goes to, those foreign prophets. And Jehoshaphat is, look, it's interesting that they still call Jehoshaphat by name here, and they don't call him Yoram or King of Edom. I don't know if that's significant, but they definitely don't give him the due by even calling him by name. Jehoshaphat, they're calling him by name. So, well, let's see what happens with him. So his first response to him is, right, his answer is go talk to those guys.
As the Lord of hosts lives, whom I serve, Elisha answered, were it not that I respect King Jehoshaphat of Judah, I wouldn't look at you or notice you. Now,
Okay, so there's flat out what he tells him. If it wasn't for Jehoshaphat, I wouldn't even look at you. So
it could be the death appointment.
Yeah, Elisha seems to be even more, to some extent, even more obnoxious, or at least defiant. He's got guts too, I guess you could say, than Elijah was. Elijah also can be tough, but Elijah also can be tough on himself. We don't know that Elisha at this time is tough on himself at all. Elijah says, I want to die at one point. He doesn't want to, he definitely has he has a sense of humility too. Elisha hasn't shown that yet. Elisha is pretty much, all we've seen him do so far is pretty much mangle 42 kids and tell a king get lost. It's pretty crazy. I mean, he says, this is what the Bible says. I wouldn't look at you. So here's what
Now
happens.
then, get me a musician. This is like Monty Python here. Bring us a shrubbery.
Think of musician.
As the musician played, the hand of the Lord came upon him, and he said, "Thus said the Lord, this wadi shall be full of pools. For thus said the Lord, you shall see no wind, you shall see no rain, and yet the wadi shall be filled with water, and you and your cattle and your pack animals shall drink. And this is but a slight thing in the sight of the Lord, for he will also deliver Moab into your hands. You shall conquer every fortified town and every splendid city. You shall fell every good tree and stop up all the wells of water, and every fertile field you shall ruin with stones."
Okay, so you're going to get water. It's going to be a miracle because it's not coming from rain. It's 100% a miracle. So the wadis are the dry creek beds, right? The arroyos. Can get flash floods, get water out of, all of a sudden it's there because the water runoff, and people get killed in the wadis sometimes because there's no sign of the water's coming, and all of a sudden it just comes rushing down. But in this case, it seems even like it's just going to be there. It's not even going to rush in, it's just going to fill up the water in the cistern. So that's all good. You're going to get your water. And not only that, you're going to have a great victory. It's a great victory for you.
But it sounds like we're gonna give it to you, but then we're gonna take it away.
Well,
And
no,
you shall rule with stone.
yeah. Well, we'll get to that. No, that's a good point, right? We're going to get to that, Marcia. So you're going to get your water. And again, he needs to literally calm down a little bit, right? That's what the musician playing the music for him chills him out a little bit. He gets calm, and that's why, he's now in a better place, and he can say, you're going to get the water, and then you're going to get even more of this amazing victory. And what's interesting about this, as Marcia points out, is what happens during the victory. You conquer the towns, but you're also going to cut down all the trees. You're going to stop up all the wells, and you're going to destroy all the fields. Now, all those things sound like really, really not nice things to do to people. And normally speaking, it's not even allowed, because we know the Torah actually says in Deuteronomy that you're not allowed to do any of these things. Well, you can stop up water, but you're not supposed to cut down trees.
Have we gotten to Deuteronomy yet?
We haven't, yes, this is post Deuteronomy.
Okay, thank you.
So this is after the laws of Deuteronomy. Now, the text of Deuteronomy specifically says when you go into battle, you're not allowed to cut down the trees when you go into war. Knowing that, well, I shouldn't say cut down the trees, cut down those kind of trees. Cut down trees that are good, kol etz tov. You're not allowed to cut down trees that are going to give you food. You're not allowed to cut down trees that are going to be beneficial to you. Knowing that, again, it takes years and years for trees to grow. Now, you can cut down trees when you go into battle. Cutting down trees, for siege work and for, destroying the city through all different types of, catapults, and cutting down trees for spears and all different kinds of battering rams, all those kind of things. Those are all, you think people did them. This is what happens in war. But you're not allowed to do it. So why would Elisha say you're doing it? Well, one can make the argument that Deuteronomy is speaking specifically in the land of Israel. You're not allowed to cut down trees that you'll use one day. So all the stuff that they're about to do to Moab is really not of consequence because it's not their country, which is not a great answer. I know it's not what you want to hear, and it's definitely not politically correct. But there is this understanding that when you go to war against another country in their country, then maybe you're allowed to get away with a slash and burn type of situation. That's the price of war, you could say. But this does strike us as something that is, wow, they're really going to destroy Moab. Like Moab is going to be wiped off the map because not only are they going to destroy the cities, but they're going to render them uninhabitable afterwards so that people won't be able to go back there. So like Mesha will be out of business and he'll be dead, and then nobody else will be able to build those cities back up. So this is a really big promise, if you will, which is that you're going to be able to run roughshod over these people, and you're not going to have any problems with them ever again. I mean, they're literally, you're trashing the place. So that's what Elisha says is going to happen. This is what God will do, because it says that God will deliver them. It's God who's going to do it. It says, the sight of the Lord, for he will also deliver Moab into your hands. It's God's going to do it.
And in the morning, when it was time to present the meal offering, water suddenly came from the direction of Edom, and the land was covered by the water. Meanwhile, all the Moabites had heard that the kings were advancing to make war on them. Every man old enough to bear arms rallied, and they stationed themselves at the border.
Right. So everyone's with us right now. They got the water. Water comes out. You get all the water.
Not from the mountains. It's very clear that it comes from the other direction.
Comes from the
Uphill.
direction of Edom. That's right. So this is a miracle. I mean, water's filling up. The land's covered by water. Not a problem. Everything seems to be going into place. The Moabites now see all these soldiers coming at them. They all get ready to go. They get on the border with not the border with Israel, the border with Edom, the border to the south of them, and they're ready to go into battle.
Next morning, when they rose, the sun was shining over the water, and from the distance, the water appeared to the Moabites as red as blood. That's blood, they said. The kings must have fought among themselves and killed each other. Now to the spoil, Moab.
So the Moabites
Let's
think
go.
that they think that we're all dead, that we went to war against each other, which is possible. Could have happened. It's possible. That happens sometimes. People would go to war and they ended up fighting amongst themselves. It's possible. So they see it. The appearance of the water to them looks like blood. Whatever. They come out and they're going to attack, or they're going to not even attack. They're going to clean up. They're going to get the spoil.
They entered the Israelite camp, and the Israelites arose and attacked the Moabites, who fled before them. They advanced, constantly attacking the Moabites, and they destroyed the towns. Every man threw a stone into each fertile field so that it was covered over, and they stopped up every spring and felled every fruit tree. Only the walls of Kir Hareset were left, and then the slingers surrounded it and attacked it.
So again, what happens? The Moabites get lured out of their fortified areas, their cities and their forts. They come out, they attack. The Israelites are like, oh my gosh, they're coming out to fight us. We don't even have to go in and lay siege to it. They come out, they kill everybody. The Israelites kill everybody. It's like an open invitation for a slaughter. They assumed they were going to have to like fight it out for weeks. No, the battle's over right away. Just like Elisha said. My gosh, we're just attacking everything. And it's coming to us. I mean, it's like literally everything is going perfect. So it's like not even a tough war. And so the Moabites are being destroyed everywhere, and they go to this one place, Kir Hareset, and this is Hareset, and they are surrounded.
Seeing that the battle was going against it, the king of Moab led an attempt of 700 swordsmen to break a way through to the king of Edom, but they failed.
So he tries to get out with a last minute. I'm going to get out of my siege and try to get out and maybe hit one of the weaker sides of the attack, right? The Edomites, but that doesn't work. He tries to break out. This is all the king of Moab doing this, right? King Mesha. This is all Mesha. Now here's the scene. This is where it all gets weird.
So he took his firstborn son, who was to succeed him as king, and offered him up on the wall as a burnt offering. A great wrath came upon Israel, so they withdrew from him and went back to their own land.
That is
That's
the
weird.
weirdest line in the Bible. I said it's one of the weirdest scenes. That line is what happened. One line. The whole scene up until then is fairly standard. A war, prophet says go to war, they go to war. We've already seen that. We've seen that all throughout the book of Kings already. We've seen it in Joshua. We've seen it, like that's a normal kind of situation. That's not weird. That last line baffles the imagination. We can't even.
Moabite offering his son? Or my-
Well, let's take a look, because the commentary on this, let's see what the commentary is on this. According to Rashi, according to Rashi, who's quoting Midrash, Mesha says to himself, what is the character of this nation that miracles such as these were performed for them? So Mesha asks his people, how do the Israelites, how do they do this? How do they keep getting miracles performed for them? And his people say, their forefather Abraham had only one son, the Holy One, blessed be he, said to them, offer him before me. And he wanted to sacrifice the Holy One. So he said, I have a firstborn son, I will go sacrifice him to the gods. So he just did what Abraham did. He didn't know. He didn't hear the last part of the story, which is that God didn't want him to sacrifice. He just did what he. Okay, but that doesn't even answer the question, right? How did it work? This caused a terrible anger, for their iniquities were remembered, that they too worship pagan deities, are not worthy of a miracle. Whoa. Rashi's answer to this is that when Mesha went up and did this, Mesha played a hand, which was a desperate hand. But by doing this, according to what Rashi's saying, according to tradition, when he sacrificed his son, he reminded God of all the bad things the Israelites have done. And then God said, nah, I'm done. You're right. You're right, Mesha. What am I fighting for these people for?
The
That's
sacrifice-
insane.
The sacrifice did happen.
It worked. According to this, it worked. According to Rashi, it worked. Look, according to the Bible, it worked. The question is why did it work, or how did it work, or what happened? I mean, the sources on this are tough, because how could sacrificing a child work? How could that sympathetic magic work? And
It did happen.
it happened. The question is how did it work? How was it effective? Like, how did it work? So I'll show you some of the other commentary on this. Let's see. I don't know if this one's going to be, yeah. So here's Rav Kimchi, Radak. So this is from the Middle Ages, a little after Rashi. So he took his oldest son, right? And how did he? He says, my Lord Father of blessed memory interpreted this to mean that the son of the king of Edom, who was fit to rule after him, was in the custody of the king of Moab, and that for this reason the king of Edom came with the kings of Judah and Israel, since with their help he planned to save his son from captivity under the king of Moab. When the king of Moab planned to break through to the king of Edom and could not, in his wrath he took the son of the king of Edom, brought him up on the wall, and burned him before his father's eyes. That is what he meant. That is what he offered him up as a burnt offering means, that he burned him as one burns a burnt offering. So Kimchi's understanding of this is an interesting one, which is less supernatural and more like maybe this is what happened, which is a stretch, but it's based on real stuff. He knew, which was the Roman practice. I just saw this on one of the many shows about the Romans that are on TV. The Romans would take, and other nations did it too, but the Romans were famous for it. They would take the princes, the heir apparents of different kings that they conquered, take their children back to Rome as hostage, as hostage, right? Because if that king ever got out of line, they'd kill the kid. Now, obviously, that was part of the plan. The other part of the plan was raising that kid in Rome would make the kid sympathetic to Rome. They'd give the kid a Roman education, teach him Latin, raise him with other kings' kids, other princes, and then the kid would have a good feeling about Rome. Kind of Roman style to them, right? It's one of the shows I was watching was about the German tribes that Arminius was one of the German tribes people that got raised by the Romans and then goes back and actually leads the Germans against the Romans. But this is what the Romans did. And so by the time of Kimchi, by the time he's writing in the Middle Ages, everybody knew this style of keeping people under wraps, so under control. You take their kids. And so maybe when it says what he's saying is he took his son, Mesha didn't take his son, he took the king of Edom's son and sacrificed him. The consequence being that the Edomites then got pissed and left. And it caused the coalition to break apart.
And they realized that that's what he did, right?
It seems like a stretch.
Okay.
It seems like Mesha killed his own kid.
Mhm.
And whatever happened in the consequence to that is that the war, that everything changed. That's the end of the story, folks. There's no more. We don't know, other than it says they withdrew and they went back. The Bible is done with that story. And it leaves us with so many questions. What just happened? What happened?
So do they go back to both ends of both areas?
Yeah, assumingly they just go back home.
to their place?
They go back home. But they had these guys up on the ropes, up against the ropes, right? They're about to deliver the knockout punch, killing Mesha. It's all over. His revolt is over. Everything gets wiped out. You know, they're not going to be a problem anymore. The Moabites, they're done. So everybody's with me right here, right? That's the way the story ends.
Maybe they weren't as big a problem as it seemed to be.
They were a big enough problem. They went to war against them, right? They destroyed them. A lot of Moabites just died according to our story. Everybody with me so far? Everybody got it? That's what we have in the Bible. And that's why I say it's one of the most bizarre stories. I think it's the most bizarre story of the Bible. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. As weird as this story is, as much of a puzzle as it is, it's one of the only stories in the entire Bible that we have the other side of the story. Which makes this even more amazing. Because this story was uncovered. And how was it uncovered? Well, there's a lot of different sites that will tell you about the Moabite stone, what we call the Mesha steel. Here it is right here. The Mesha steel today is sitting in the Louvre Museum in France, in Paris. Mesha wrote his side of the story. And we have it. It was uncovered in 1868. So right about the time that America is emerging out of the Civil War, take you back into history, the Ottoman Empire is collapsing, and there's a lot of people that are going to the area. It's still under Turkish control, but the Turks are nowhere near as powerful as they used to be. Everyone's kind of waiting for the Ottoman Empire to collapse, which it does in about another 40 years.
What does it mean squeeze here?
I'll get to that. You're
Okay,
jumping ahead, Rose, but I'm still giving the Ottoman, the
Sorry.
historical background of this.
Reading ahead.
Everybody's rushing to Israel. It's not called Israel at the time. It's either called Palestine or it's called, it's the part of the Turkish Empire. Everyone's rolling into this area, which at the time, by the way, Palestine includes Jordan. So when people are talking about Palestine, they're also talking about Jordan here. Make that very clear. There is no Jordan. No one ever calls it the country Jordan until the 1920s. So they come into this area, Europeans, even some Americans, but a lot of Europeans they're coming in by droves into ancient Israel and the surrounding areas, and they're trying to dig up every treasure they can. Because the Ottoman Turks don't really care. They can't stop them. They actually want the money. And they don't care. They're letting people come in and find and dig up this stuff. Now, we haven't figured out like modern methods of archaeology quite yet, but we're going around, we're trying to find stuff. And in the course of trying to find stuff, in 1868, they discover just around the area of Dibon, which is ancient Dibon, which is mentioned in the Bible as one of the main Moabite cities. And they find a black slab basalt, which is like, it's like volcanic black rock, 3.5 feet long by 2 feet wide. They find it. And again, it looks like kind of like this when it's found, except it's a big black rock. But what happens is the Bedouins who find it, who are the people who find it with the missionaries and the other Europeans looking for these treasures, they destroy it. They break it. They heat it up real hot, and they then pour cold water on it, which causes it to break. Now, some people say they broke it because they thought it was bad luck. They thought it was demonic. They thought it was evil. There are other people who say they did it because they didn't like the Turks and they were not happy with the amount of money that they were getting for it. We don't know why they destroyed it. The either side, it's not a good thing that they destroyed it. But thankfully, before they destroyed it, someone did a squeeze. And what is a squeeze? They took a piece of paper and they rubbed over it with charcoal, and they got all the words off of it. So they did a rub of it.
They did a rubbing. Rubbing I've heard of before, but not squeeze.
Yeah, squeeze is a little different. It's done with like paper mache. It's a little bit more involved than a rubbing, but
Oh, I see. Okay.
but it is a great way of preserving something that was carved, where there's incisions. So they get the actual incisions off of it. Well, thankfully we have that, because if you look at it at the Louvre today, it's been reconstructed. They've put the pieces back into it where they've reassembled the puzzle, but then parts of it, the pieces are gone. And so they use, a similar black, I'll show you. They use a similar kind of black stone to kind of fill in the gaps of what was broken. And so I'll show you an up close picture of it today.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
But skeptical of stuff back in, and I have no idea of this question, but so I'm asking you, maybe if not, I'll do my own research, but because it's fairly new in criminal law, or at least I think it is. Was there chain of custody back then to know that this squeeze is authentic? In other words, it was done and then it was witnessed? Not that you would know just by knowing, but I mean, do you have any idea? Otherwise,
Well, look, part of it is the answer is it could have been part of it it could have been forged, but the question is, like, the part here, I'll show you what it looks like today. So this is what it looks like today. So you can see parts of it here that are missing. This is the part where the squeeze we use to reconstruct it. So, it's it's possible that somebody, would have done that, but the squeeze is very old. I mean, it's not like it was done hundreds of years later. It was done, I mean, when they got the Mesha steel, when they recovered the steel, when they got it back, they were able to also have the squeeze right away. Now, look, there's differences of opinion on, and that's what it looks like up close, the letters. That is exactly the way biblical Hebrew looks. So if you look at it and you go, well, that's not the way Hebrew looks. Well, that's what Hebrew looked like back then. So the language, it is possible that someone would have changed it, but it would have had to have been changed like literally in a few weeks, a few months, whatever. It was literally a matter of within a year, this thing was reconstructed.
And I'm not understanding, where did they get the information? Oh, because somebody had
Yeah.
done.
So
this.
they've reconstructed it.
Back
They've
in.
Yes, they put the puzzle pieces back together, but then for the parts that were not, they used that rub, if you will, to then be able to retranslate it. So it is, I mean, it is possible that it wasn't there, but I mean, the reality is that in those days to be able to do that. And I will tell you, one of the reasons why it's not likely that it was forged was because in parts of it where they didn't have the technology to figure out what was behind it, they've now been able to do kind of like radiographs on it to see, number one, how old it is. They can carbon date it much better. They couldn't do that in the 1860s, but they also, so they're able to do that, but they're also able to now kind of shine an X-ray on it to find out what was actually carved in for the parts that were scratched away, and they match up with the parts that were on the rub. So
Did
they,
it just naturally wear away?
some of it didn't. There are parts of it that we can't read.
But it was the part that they.
But the part, by the way, the parts that we naturally couldn't read that were kind of rubbed off, those also came out with the radio, with the
Was it intentional,
X-ray.
Or was it just, it wore away over time?
some of it wore away, but the majority of the damage to it was intentional.
It wasn't.
Yeah, the majority of it, 100%. They know that it was intentional. They know it was cracked on purpose. It's upsetting because they had it all together and it didn't have to be cracked.
It's a stone.
It's a stone. It's a one solid piece of stone. You can see it there's a picture of me with it somewhere. I don't know where my picture went of my kids and I when we went to the Louvre, and when your dad takes you to Paris and he takes you to see the Mesha steel, you know that your dad's weird. So that is definitely most people go to the Louvre, they want to see the Mona Lisa. I saw the Mona Lisa, I saw that for 2 seconds. I walked up. First of all, there's mobs of people standing around the Mona Lisa. I don't even think it's Da Vinci's top 20 paintings anyways, but honestly, I really don't. But I spent quite a long time standing in front of this thing, because this is the oldest text that we have from outside the Bible that confirms the existence of people in the Bible. By name. So let's just take a look at what's in the Mesha steel. Let's take a look at the words that are there. 34 lines, about 260 words. Here is the Moabite, and it's in Moabite, which is almost exactly, again, it's old Hebrew characters. It was from 860, so we know when it was written. We've carbon dated it. Unlike, texts that we have in the Bible, the earliest ones that go back, the earliest texts of the Bible go back to some Septuagint fragments that we found that are 2,000 years old. Obviously, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are 2,200 years old. Those are the oldest fragments we have of the Bible that we can say, oh, this is a piece of the Bible. This is 2,800 years old.
So let me ask you one more
Because
question.
it's written on stone.
So.
Yeah.
The king of Moab.
I'm going to read it. To you.
But he continues to live there. He goes back to his area.
Well, let's read it.
Okay.
So this is what he wrote. I am Mesha, the son of Chemosh, something, king of Moab. Now, What is this few dots here? We don't know, because it's probably his father. So his father's name was something like Chemosh something. Who's Chemosh? Chemosh is the god of the Moabites. We know that. We have Chemosh mentioned in the Bible. So Chemosh is their equivalent of Adonai, the Yud-Heh Vav-Heh name. Now Mesha's name doesn't have Chemosh in it, but his father's did. Every king of Israel and Judah have almost, not Ahab, but almost every other king has God's name in it. Yehoshaphat, Adonai is my judge. The Yud-Heh Vav-Heh name is my judge. Yehoram, God will be exalted. They all have God's name in it, right? So they had their God's name in it. Very similar to us. He's the king of Moab, the Dibonite, right? By the way, doesn't say I'm a sheep breeder either, by the way. He doesn't call himself the sheep breeder. He calls himself the king of Moab. He's from Dibon, which is where they found this. My father reigned over Moab 30 years, and I became king after my father. And I made this high place for Chemosh in, again, this is Korach. In modern day Jordan, it's called Kerach, the high place of deliverance, because he had delivered me from all that attacked me, and because he made me see my desire upon all my enemies. By the way, exactly the same thing that our kings say over and over again. God gave me this place and I made it an altar, and God delivered them to me. Same words. But here's the weird thing. This is the other side of the story. And here it says, Omri, king of Israel, oppressed Israel many days because oppressed, it shouldn't be oppressed Israel, right? Oppressed many days because Chemosh was angry with his land, and his son succeeded him. And he also said, I will oppress Moab. So what does it say here? The king of Israel, Omri, who's Ahab's father, is oppressing us because God is angry with us. Chemosh was angry with him. And his son, Ahab, doesn't call him Ahab there, but his son succeeded him and said, I will also oppress Moab. So Chemosh was angry with us and oppresses us through these kings, which is exactly what we say when we get oppressed by other kings, that God is mad at us. Same thing. In my days, he said this, and I saw my desire upon him, and Israel was humbled with everlasting humiliation. Omri had taken possession of the land of Medeba, and his people occupied it during his days and half the days of his son, 40 years. But Chemosh restored it in my days. And there's part of this that's missing. It's another part that's been damaged. Again, this is just one translation. There's a lot of translations of this, but they're all, this one's good, and it's showing you just like, this is one of the more accepted translations, if you will, I guess. But Chemosh restored it in my days, right? So God gives me back, my God gave me back my land. Now it says that he gives Israel everlasting humiliation. Well, that's clearly not the case. He kind of overstated the situation a little bit. But he won. It says he won. And God gave me the ability to take it back. Now here he says, and the men of Gad had occupied the land of Atarot for a long time. And the king of Israel had built up Atarot for himself. And I fought against the city and took it. And I slew all the people from the city, a sight for the eyes of Chemosh and for Moab. And Chemosh said to me, go take Nebo against Israel. So he goes to war against part of the land that was under, again, right up here. That he goes into this area of Gad and Reuben. Now, it says he's from Dibon, which at one point was even under Reuben's control, but he goes all the way up into Gad. So Moab, in his time, goes all the way into this area and conquers this whole area, at least according to him. He goes into Gad, right here to Atarot, which is the border between Reuben and Gad. These are all areas that were taken during the time of Joshua. And he also took Nebo, which is where Moses had died, which is on in that area too. And I went by night and fought against it from the break of dawn until noon. And I took it and slew all that were there, 7,000 men and boys and women and girls and maidservants. For to Ashtor Hamosh, I had devoted it. And I took from there the vessels of Adonai, of Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, and brought them before Chemosh. And the king of Israel had fortified Yachaz and occupied it while he was at war with me. And Chemosh drove him out and before me. And I took of Moab 200, all its chiefs, and I attacked Yachaz and took it in order to add it to Dibon. This is Mesha's side of the story, which is that he took back all these lands that had been taken from him, that his God gave him control of it. Now, what's interesting about this is that it says in the times that he was taking back these things, that he took vessels of Adonai and brought them before Chemosh. This is the earliest text in the entire world that attests to God outside of the Bible. This is the earliest time we have this.
Outside of the Bible, meaning.
Any source outside of the Bible that asserts that there is a God, Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, Adonai.
Well, wouldn't that mean that there has to be more tablets in regards to other historical issues? I mean, it isn't so, I don't know how to say it without sounding silly.
No, well, since this time, we found two other stones that are pretty important. We found the one at Tel Dan in the northern part of Israel, which is very important because it's also written on, it was written on stone and it was able to survive. And it talks about these kings. Now, why is this important? Because, well, first of all, we can date it. So we know exactly when it's from. It's from 860, around 860 BCE. There are people to this day, even, who will claim that the Mesha stele was a forgery, even though everyone scientifically who's looked at it says it's not a forgery. But there are still people who say it's a forgery. The reason that it's such an important issue is because there are people who believe, they're called biblical minimalists, who believe that everything that we have in our Bible is essentially a fantasy. It's a fairy tale. Now, here's a problem. This story has been corroborated now. This story from the book of Kings is corroborated from the Moabites. Now, the Moabites tell a slightly different tale, which doesn't surprise us that we have two different sides of this story, and they're both embellished. But there's a kernel of truth in both of the stories. There's a fact that Israel and Moab went to war during the time of Mesha, and that Mesha won. We said it, they said it. Now, of course, they say it to a much bigger extent than we said it. But it says that something from the book of Kings happened, which means that everyone who says that we can't really corroborate anything before the destruction of the country by the Babylonians, they now have to come back and say, well, that's not the case. Well, if that's not the case, then how much else is not the case? As John said, maybe we just haven't found the other tablets yet. So this is the problem. For people who are biblical minimalists, this Mesha stele is a big stick to them. Now, the other one is the one I said from Tel Dan, which we found only about 40 years ago. That one was also a problem for people because it asserts lots of things that the Bible says and is also very old, is also from this period. And so these things, and we'll talk about the Tel Dan thing when we get to that. When we read about it in the Bible version of that. When you look at these things that are mentioned in the Bible, and then we find archaeological evidence for it, that at least means that parts of the Bible are factual. Which again, for people who think it's all a fairy tale or it's all an allegory, it drives them crazy because then they're not right. And so that really upsets them. So it seems as though it's probably safe to say that there's probably a middle ground that has to be taken when it comes to the Bible being able to be proven factually, which is that maybe we can't prove everything is factual, which upsets the biblical maximalists who believe that it's the inerrant word of God, but it also is going to upset the minimalists who say this is all a fantasy. So neither side will be happy on the extremes, but probably in the middle, there's the reality of the fact that the Bible tells a story. It's not meant to ever teach history, which is one of the things I always caution people to say, well, this isn't history. The Bible actually says, if you want the history, go read the books of the annals of the kings of Israel. So they actually have these versions, but also it's some propaganda. There's also some embellishment. There's some things in the Bible that are not going to be exactly the way they happened because the people didn't want to tell that story the way it actually happened. They chose to embellish it, which we still do, folks. We do it all the time. Every time you open up a newspaper, there's embellishments in it. And again, it's a question of whether people just didn't want to tell the other side or they focused on parts of the story that were really very titillating and very exciting, but not necessarily the whole story. So yeah, we do it all the time. But when we do it in the Bible, that's where people start to get, you start to freak people out. So here's the crazy thing. I don't want to use the word crazy too much, but here's the amazing thing. The weirdest story in the Bible that I argue is maybe the weirdest story of the Bible is actually the story that's corroborated the most outside of the Bible. That's the crazy thing. That's the weird, ironic twist, is that the story that we literally scratch our head at and say, what just happened here? Actually, we found the other side of that story. That is almost a miracle in itself. That's where you say, if we're only going to find one story, how's it the weirdest story in the Bible? How did we find this guy's stone? That's where you almost have to say, God has an abundant sense of humor. God has a sense of humor where you're going to say, you think that story's funny? I'm going to let you find that stone. And that's where I'm like, you got to look at this and just, if not laugh, then you have to say, again, either God has a sense of humor, history has a sense of humor, somebody out there has a big sense of humor, because this is the story that we're going to actually get the other side of it. Crazy. That's what we got. So probably like stuff used for sacrifices or used in an altar for God that was on the other side of the Jordan, which is a dangerous place for there to be an altar for God. But look, if they lived there and they thought they were going to live there for a long time, the tribes of Gad and Reuben that were living there were like, well, we live over here. We're going to build a little altar to God over here. So they took them.
Of course, according to the priests in Jerusalem, they weren't supposed to have, right?
Of course they're not, but we know that they were. And
Yes.
look, they're living miles from Jerusalem. They're not even living on the same side of the Jordan River as Jerusalem. So they definitely would want to have that. And we know that, again, people were doing it. But yes, would it even have made the news in Judah that people in Gad and Reuben had altars to God? No.
Probably
know
not.
they did.
Like those
And
guys, who knows what they do?
But the funny thing is we've actually found those other altars. We found them in the South too. We found an altar to Adonai. We found it in an archaeological dig. We found it in Judah. So they didn't just have altars to God in the north. They had altars to God in the south. The idea that, again, everybody has to pray in Jerusalem was an obsession for the priests because that's their job, right? It's what they built their career around. But the idea that everybody bought into that, not even in Judah did everybody believe that you only had to go to Jerusalem. So this idea of telling people you only can go to Jerusalem was a big preoccupation of the priests. It's a preoccupation of the people who wrote the Bible, right? That are priests. So we're inundated with it, but we have to remember that was a minority of the people bought into that. It just so happened that those are the people who wrote the Bible. That minority of priests were the people who wrote the Bible. And by the way, I really do mean actually a minority of the priests, because each of these little altars had their own priests. So, unless you were a priest of Jerusalem, if you were a regular priest, if you were a Levite that lived somewhere else, if you were a priest that lived, anywhere outside of Jerusalem, you're like, what are you talking about? You only can worship God in Jerusalem? Look, by the time of Jesus, that was accepted. I wouldn't say accepted. I would say the idea of only sacrificing in Jerusalem was accepted. But I think by that point, people believed you could worship God anywhere. Because how can you tell people you can't worship God anywhere? Well, you tell people today you can only worship God in a synagogue. People would look at you going, what are you, nuts? You crazy? Then if you told people you can only worship God in one synagogue, the only synagogue that I tell you can worship God in, people would look at you like you were crazy. So again, by the time of Jesus, they could only offer sacrifices in Jerusalem. But how many people wanted to offer sacrifices? Maybe people wanted to pray. They wanted to pray in a synagogue. And by the time of Jesus, we have synagogues. How do we know? Because it says Jesus went to synagogues and taught people there. So by the time of Jesus, there are synagogues in Israel. So people by that point don't just have to sacrifice to pray. But we're back. We have Jerusalem.
But we've already been kicked out, so we've been,
True. We've been kicked out, and we also believe we can pray. Not only do we believe,
we were praying to God.
correct, we were praying in Babylon to God without sacrificing.
Right.
So by that point, we already believe you can sacrifice. You don't have to have sacrifice. But if you are going to sacrifice, you go to Jerusalem. But that's kind of the understanding of, well, maybe I sacrifice a couple times a year, but I don't pray a couple times a year. I can pray every day. But that is the development of religion. By this point, and again, back to Mary's original point, that they're offering there's vessels here. There's vessels there because they're offering sacrifices. Those vessels aren't there just to look at. They're probably there for functionality. And people picked up, incense with them, or they picked up the sacrifices with them. But a vessel can be almost anything. It can be almost any type of religious implement. But it's definitely a religious implement because it's a vessel of Adonai. It's something that was dedicated to God. So that is the Mesha stele. Next time you're in the Louvre, please go and see it. That's my wish for you, is to see it, stand right by it.
Mentioned that you showed the ancient Hebrew.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Moabites, similar to.
Basically, the differences are dialectic. They're literally the difference of saying you all versus you all. That's the difference.
Same thing with the Canaanites, too.
Yep. Yeah. And so I'll just since we're
Rabbi, I have one last question.
Yeah.
Before we leave this, can you actually, besides the historical documentation of the battle and what it took to get there, can you point out where it references the sacrifice of the son, the firstborn?
Yeah, hold it a second. So I just want to show you, just just to get to Mike's question. This is the Tel Dan. This is the Tel Dan stele, right? This is the stele that we found in the northern Israel, which was also obviously very badly damaged. But you can see this was from the same period, found in the north, carved by our kings, and you can see it's exactly the same script that it's a little hard to tell, but it's the same biblical Hebrew. It's not the Aramaic style script that we see as Hebrew today, but this is the Aramaic. This is the way that this stuff looked. I can, but it takes me so long to read it because I'm decoding the pictures. I'm decoding the pictures, the symbols as I'm doing it.
So this is in the north, but it was in the south where the fighting was.
It was in the other side of Jordan.
So how did
Let me
they
just
get there?
let me just show you one thing too. Let me just show you, just so you understand the biblical Hebrew. When DeMille decided to do the 10 Commandments, notice he went to biblical Hebrew. He didn't go he went old school. No, I mean, you knew what biblical, we knew what biblical Hebrew was like in the, people have been studying it. So just so you can see Charlton Heston, he's holding commandments as they would have been written, right? I just want to make it clear that you've seen biblical Hebrew before. You just haven't seen it up close. No, I actually, now that you mention that, Mike, I actually think that Mel Gibson, God forbid. No, I actually think that Mel Brooks, when in his, let me just see, since you brought it up, I think he actually used traditional Hebrew. I don't think he did. I don't think he had. That's a good question. I don't think he used biblical Hebrew, but he was goofing anyways, right? That scene with the 15 commandments. Wait, hold on a second. Let me just see if he's got. Let me see what his commandments look like. Yeah, I was right. Yeah, Mel Brooks didn't even attempt to. He just used our Hebrew. There's the. Yeah, the question is what's actually on the other five. The five that fall. That's a good question if we can read the Hebrew on what was actually there. Because there's the. Yeah, no, I think there is. Because these ones are the Anochi Adonai Elohecha. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Lo Tirtzach. This is the, so these are the.
It looks like they just copied them.
What?
It looks like this one and this one are the same.
No.
They're not?
It's got other words here.
Are there?
It's got. I think that these words here. By the way, we've now just decided we're going to decode. How did we end up decoding? But no, these ones here are Lo Tirtzach, Lo Tignov, you can see. You know what? He's still alive, thank God. We can go and ask him. But I think right here, I think this word right here. I'm not joking, but I think this word right here. I think it says Lo Titzchak, which means don't laugh. I honestly, I think I just found a secret right now. I have to go back and find out what he did with those other 5 commandments. You've now prompted me to try to find the secret of what's on the 5 commandments that broke. Oh, actually, no, it says these are the last, found at last, the last 5 commandments. Maybe somebody actually did this already. Here it is. One of, so here's the translation. Oh, look, see? Lo tavor, you shall not pass. I was right. It says lo tatzti, lo titzchak. You shall not people laugh. So there you go. I was right. It actually does say don't laugh, but you shall not pass. What was lo tavor supposed to be for? Don't pass. But that's funny. Oh, here it says lo tikneh. Yeah, don't buy retail.
Well, maybe it's a Lord of the Rings.
I thought it said lo tikneh.
Or the Lord of the Rings movies.
Don't buy retail. Lo tisha bear.
So
So that's funny, right? Obviously, the inside joke by the Brooks crew. So there you go. So there is an answer, folks, and we were partly right. It is an inside joke. Isn't that great? Low talk. Don't laugh. I think that's hysterical. We actually found it, but it turns out that the answer was right in front of us the whole time. But now you know. So. Well, it just goes to show you. See, we're investigative. We're curious people. So, yeah. So when you think about what? It's a great scene. Anyways, as I said, this is just one of the weirdest scenes in the Bible. The fact that it's been built up and built on because of the Mesha steel is, look, over the last few days, I looked over some of the sources, and we touched on the most important ones of what the traditional sources say about it, what other people say about it. Look, Mesha didn't, to get to John's point, Mesha doesn't say that he offered up his son. Yeah, that's critical, John. It doesn't say that's how he got out of the jam, was by offering up his son. So it doesn't say that. Mesha never says, I offered up my son. And that's how Chemosh responded by defeating them. But that does seem what happens in here, which is that when he offers up his son, that something happens. This great wrath that comes upon Israel. Look, we talked about it. Maybe he offered up Edomites, the Edomite son. It doesn't seem like, it seems like a stretch. There's another possibility. When it says a great wrath came upon the people, is that they're sickened by it. And they say, oh, that's horrible. Let's all go back. But that doesn't seem to make sense. The guy kills his son, burns up his son, and they all go, oh, this is horrible. Let's go. Let's go. Because that's what it says. They go back to their own place. But that doesn't seem like it makes sense. The guy kills his son and we're like, okay, war's over. That's horrible. War's horrible. He's horrible. Let's go back. It doesn't seem to make sense. So yet then we're left with this other possibility, which is that when he offers up his son, something supernatural happens. And the people have to leave. Our armies have to leave.
They took the water away. I'm kidding.
Who knows? That's as good an answer as anyone. But the idea that somehow the war is over because he did this, and that like a miracle happened. What happened? Why is the Bible so empty on what just happened? Because it sounds like something very freaky just happened. Something crazy happens. Some force, demonic, godly, whatever happened, something happened. Look, we said Rashi says that God gets mad at the people because he goes, oh yeah, they're no better than him. Whatever happens, something gets unplugged. Because what happened was Elisha told them they were going to win. God said, I'm going to deliver them to you. And then God doesn't do it. So the consequences of this are huge. This is something happened here that what just happened? Prophet. Something happened that Elisha's prophecy just went out the window. Because it's not just they went to war and they were about to win and it's all over. Elisha said God's going to do it. That's in the text. That's not a midrash. That's not an explanation. That's not an addition. The text says Elisha says it's going to happen. It says right here, folks. Elisha didn't make it happen. The Lord will deliver. He will deliver Moab into your hands. God says, go to war. It'll be okay. I'll give you the water. You're going to go to war and you're going to utterly destroy him. And that's not what happened.
So could it be, and read further, oh, you said this is the end.
That's the end of the story.
If I'm thinking to read
There's no more Mesha. Mesha doesn't get mentioned again. He's done. Moab seems to have won. And according to Mesha, he won. So I don't know what to tell you because I've read it again. I read the sources again. I've read the other stuff. I definitely encourage everybody to go out and read more and find some explanation to this that I don't know.
Not worth sacrificing so many more people? Was it just a compromise to go back and regroup? I mean, it could be a lot of different things, right?
Could be. But all we know is that the war's over after this.
And someone gets sacrificed.
And a kid got sacrificed up on the wall for everybody to see. So, weirdest story in the Bible? Definitely up there. If it's not the weirdest, it's one of the weirdest. There you have it.
It's not good enough, and someone gets sacrificed. How old was this person who sacrificed?
We don't know.
A kid, right?
We don't know. It says his firstborn son. He could have been old. He could have been in his 20s. Doesn't say he's a kid. Just says he's a firstborn son. It says the firstborn son, which is the one who is the heir. It says who is going to succeed him as king. There's not a question. It's just some random person. Again, was it the Edomite king? Well, maybe the Edomite prince. I don't know, but it's somebody who was going to be king of somewhere, just got sacrificed, is dead, is very Game of Thrones. But even weirder. Anybody else? Any other comments? Any other possibilities? Any other things that can make me not have nightmares of this? And look, it's not that I have a nightmare of this, but it is a nightmare, and it is somebody's nightmare, and it's something I don't have any other explanations for. And I've never really seen a good explanation other than a horrible miracle, anti-miracle, whatever you want to call, a disaster of supernatural proportions happened when this guy offered up his son. That is my best guess of what happened. And the Bible, just let it, that's all they can say about it.
So maybe there was a disaster, supernatural proportions, and this was their propaganda about it.
Whose propaganda about it?
The Israelites' propaganda. See how terrible they are? This is what they had to do to defeat us.
Could be. Could be. Because this was a last ditch effort. Like there was nothing else that he could do other than this. I don't know. All I'm going to tell you is that seems like the most likely possibility, and it's not a good possibility because it means that people can invoke powers that are pretty bad and there's no consequence to it, I guess, is what kind of leaves me with that reality. Which is, again, kind of why Rashi's explanation at least makes us feel like, yeah, are you really that much better? You know, you guys do bad things too. So maybe God just says, yeah, you know what, I'm not gonna help you guys anymore. Whatever. That's the best we can do. I mean, that's the best we can derive from this as a lesson, and maybe not be scared is that.
Isn't that kind of where we are today?
What?
I'm not gonna help you with this anymore. You guys figure it out.
Could be.
Kind of thing.
Could be that you don't deserve any more than this.
I'm looking for some sign right now.
Well, you might be afraid, you should be afraid of maybe what you get. That's the
Okay,
that's the lesson. You may not get what you like. We're going to finish with one more story. We're kind of right on the border of ending here, but I don't want to end there. It's such a freaky bad story. But again, anybody else, feel free to jump in before we move on, but we're about to move on. So we're going to read one more story and from Alicia, and we'll finish with this. Maybe to get that weird taste out of our mouth. Well, maybe not. Let's read with this story.
A certain woman, the wife of one of the disciples of the prophets, cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know how your servant revered the Lord. And now a creditor is coming to seize my 2 children as slaves."
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
That's scary, yeah. Elisha said to her, "What can I do for you? Tell me, what have you in the house?" She replied, "Your servant has nothing at all in the house except a jug of oil."
Wow. Sounds a little bit like an Elijah trick.
"Go," he said, "and borrow vessels outside from all your neighbors, empty vessels, as many as you can. Then go in and shut the door behind you and your children, and pour oil into all those vessels, removing each one as it is filled."
Whoa. Kind of like what Elijah does with his oil and food.
She went away and shut the door behind her and her children. They kept bringing vessels to her, and she kept pouring. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." He answered her, "There are no more vessels." And the oil stopped. She came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your children can live on the rest."
Yay.
Oh, Rabbi, you're funny.
Wait, so that's the end. His last words are just go sell it and you can live. So the miracle of the oil. So you thought that the Hanukkah miracle was a good miracle. This miracle is even better. The woman who became an oil salesman. a salesperson. So she gets a miracle performed for her. What's interesting, of course, about it is that Elisha pulls that out for her, right? She's connected to him, to the prophets. She's connected, and it's almost as if he's like, he says, "What do you got?" Like, right? What do you got in the house? So it's almost like he doesn't even know, like he doesn't even have a plan, but he knows if there's something in here, I can work with it. And that's what he does. He says, get all the things together, get a vessel of oil, we'll do this. This will be the miracle. So that is the way he pulls off this miracle, which is a real miracle of oil, not like the Hanukkah miracle, which seemed like, we can squeeze a little bit more light out of this oil, that's in the lamp. This is,
That never happened.
which it's at least according to, at least according to the Maccabees, it didn't happen. According to the rabbis, it happened, but according to the Maccabees, that's not what happened. That's not what they didn't need it, and they were there. But again, it's not a real reason to celebrate a holiday for 8 days either. We squeezed a little bit more juice out of our oil lamp. Now, this is literally oil magically, miraculously appearing to fill up this woman's jugs so that she could sell it.
Back to what Mary had said about the vessels, right? So these are the implements.
Yeah, well, in this case, again, according to this, the vessels here are kalim. It's just the word that is used for vessels. It could be pots,
Right, and
jars.
can carry, right.
So the word clay in Hebrew and in Moabite, as we can see too, means a vessel. The difference with the vessels that were mentioned in Mesha steel is it literally says vessels to God. So those were holy vessels. So these are vessels that are, again, household appliances. She had a pot, she had a jar, she had a pan. They all get filled with the oil. So everything's getting filled with oil, all the vessels. So it says all the vessels, all kol hakalim. So that it's a vessel. It can be anything, any kind of utility. So that's that story. Getting the oil sold. Now we'll do this story.
One day, Elisha visited Shunem. A wealthy woman lived there, and she urged him to have a meal, and whenever he passed by, he would stop there for a meal. Once she said to her husband, "I am sure it is a holy man of God who comes this way regularly."
Wow. So she tells her husband that this guy who keeps coming by for meals, he's a prophet. This isn't just some random guy coming by.
"Let us make a small enclosed upper chamber and place a bed, a table, a chair, and a lampstand there for him, so that he can stop there whenever he comes to us."
Yeah. So we'll make him a little room in our house so that he can stay here. Because, this is a man of God. It's a good idea for us to take care of him. Yeah.
One day he came there. He retired to the upper chamber and lay down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, "Call that Shunammite woman." He called her, and she stood before him.
So it also tells us that Elisha is at least sometimes not by himself. He has a servant. He has a helper named Gehazi. This guy is going to be important because we're going to read about him over the next couple chapters. He is his assistant. So he says to his servant, "Call that woman."
He said to him, "Tell her, you have gone to all this trouble for us. What can we do for you? Can we speak in your behalf to the king or to the army commander?" She replied, "I live among my own people." "What then can be done for her?" he asked. "The fact is," said Gehazi, "she has no son and her husband is old."
So he says to her, he calls her and says, "Well, I got to do something for you. Can I talk to someone on your behalf? Can I help you in some way, right? Can I help you with the authorities? Can I help you with the king? Can I help you with the commander? Is there something I can do for you? I want to repay the debt a little bit." Right? And she says, "No, I'm okay. I'm okay. When she says I live among my own people, she's saying I'm comfortable. I don't need any help. These are my people. I get along with everybody. I don't need anything." And that's when Gehazi steps up and says, she doesn't have a son. And her husband is old, implying that he can't have a child with her anymore. That's the implication here.
Call her, he said. He called her, and she stood in the doorway. And Elisha said, at this season next year, you will be embracing a son. She replied, please, my lord, man of God, do not delude your maidservant.
So
She doesn't.
you're gonna have a son, and she says, don't stop saying that. You're just playing with me. Don't do that.
The woman conceived and bore a son at the same season the following year as Elisha had assured her.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. God gave her a miracle. That's a great story. Yay. Elisha does another miracle. Well, wait a second. That's not the end of the story. If we were watching Dateline, it's only 30 minutes in. That's not the person who's responsible. There's more show to come. And here's the story.
The child grew up. One day he went out to his father among the reapers. Suddenly he cried to his father, oh, my head, my head. He said to a servant, carry him to his mother. He picked him up and brought him to his mother, and the child sat on her lap until noon, and he died.
That is not the way you wanted that story to end. That is not a good story. That's a story of a woman getting a son after not being able to have a son, and then her son just has some problem and dies. That's not good. And it said that she held him while he died. That's horrific. That's not the way we wanted this story to end. Well, wait, it's not over.
She took him up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and left him and closed the door. Then she called to her husband, please send me one of the servants and one of the she-asses so I can hurry to the man of God and back. But he said, why are you going to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. She answered, it's all right.
Well, that's kind of weird because his son also just died. And he seems to be saying, you can't bother the guy. Right? Which seems to mean like you don't bother the guy unless it's a Rosh Chodesh or a Shabbat. And he says, you don't go there. You don't go to him. And she says, no, it'll be okay. She says, it's okay. Well, the Hebrew, as you can see, it says, shalom. It's cool. It's okay.
She had the ass saddled and said to her servant, urge the beast on. See that I don't slow down unless I tell you. She went on until she came to the man of God on Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her from afar, he said to his servant Gehazi, there is that Shunammite woman.
Yeah, so he sees her coming. He's on Mount Carmel, again, near modern day Haifa, one of the places that Elijah was at too. And she comes to the man of God and he sees her from far away.
Go, hurry toward her and ask her, how are you? How is your husband? How is the child? We are well, she replied. But when she came up to the man of God on the mountain, she clasped his feet. Gehazi stepped forward to push her away, but the man of God said, let her alone, for she is in bitter distress, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me.
Well, that's weird because Gehazi first comes out and says, how are you? Well, actually, he tells him to. Gehazi goes to him and says, God, how are you? How are you? Right? How's your husband? How's your child? And she just says, we are well. But she doesn't talk to Gehazi. She comes up to Elisha and she grabs him on his feet. So, she gets on the ground, she grabs him on his feet. Gehazi goes over to try to get her away from his boss. And he says to her, let her alone. He goes, I don't know what's going on here. He actually says that. God has not told me what's going on here. I didn't know. And he's supposed to know. So he doesn't know. Something's wrong. By the way, you already see that Gehazi is something's off with this guy. Now, we don't know why yet, because right now, all we know is he works for Elisha. But we do know that she won't tell him what's wrong. She doesn't tell him. And she also is lying on Elisha's feet, and Gehazi is that's where you see, you know, you could argue he's doing his job, but he tries to push her away. Now, he knows how important this woman is to Elisha. Look, and I don't want to tell you that there are people who have interpreted this to mean that like Elisha is really the father of this kid, but those are the people who are reading other things into the Bible, which may or may not be there. I don't think he's necessarily the kid's father, but the people who are trying to read between the lines are saying maybe that's how she got pregnant. He is spending the night there. That was a rabbi who told me that. I'm not saying some person told me that. Said the guy happens to be staying overnight in the house. So I don't know, but it doesn't say that. But we do know that Gehazi seems to have something off. Gehazi's kid, and he wants him, I don't know. He's a pretty bad guy. And she doesn't want to talk to Gehazi.
Then she said, "Did I ask my lord for a son? Didn't I say, don't mislead me?" He said to Gehazi, "Tie up your skirts, take my staff in your hand and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not answer him. And place my staff on the face of the boy."
Whoa. So all she says to him is, I told you, don't mess with me. Now he knows what happened. Now he knows. She doesn't even say my boy's dead. She says, I told you, I didn't ask you for a son in a way, like, right? You told me I was going to have a son, and now this is what happens. So Elisha now is like to Gehazi, go back with her, give her, put the staff there. Now you could say, why doesn't he go back? Now it could be that he's older. He doesn't want to slow everybody up. I don't know. Mike just said that the father doesn't want to see him. I don't know. The point is that he doesn't go back. He just sends the staff. And assumedly, that's all it will take. Well, let's read what happens.
But the boy's mother said, "As the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So he arose and followed her. Gehazi had gone on before them and had placed the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. He turned back to meet him and told him, "The boy has not wakened."
So they tried the staff. Okay, well, first of all, let's say, obviously, she says, no, you're going, Elisha. Don't give me the staff. Don't bring the staff. I'm not leaving you. You go and do it. So they try with the staff. Elisha goes, this is why you think maybe, let's just get there quick. Just take the staff. Don't wait for me. Have Gehazi run back and take the staff. Like, that's going to do the trick. Do that right away. Get this kid alive, right? Make him alive again. It didn't work. So Gehazi tells Elisha he hasn't come back because it hasn't returned to life.
Elisha came into the house, and there was the boy laid out dead on his couch. He went in, shut the door behind the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. Then he mounted the bed and placed himself over the child. He put his mouth on its mouth, his eyes on its eyes, and his hands on its hands, as he bent over it, and the body of the child became warm.
Now, we've seen this before. This is what Elijah did too, right? Elijah resurrected or brought a boy back to life who had died, right? Elijah did it. He just did it too. This is actually even more kind of descriptive. It's more visual. But remember, Elijah brought that boy back to life? Now Elisha's brought a boy back to life.
Time had passed.
Since the kid was dead. Now you could say, he's mostly dead. The words of another great Jewish comic, Billy Crystal, he's mostly dead. But he's
Just resting.
just resting. The point is that it's a miracle. It's meant to be a miracle. Everybody thought the kid was gone, and time had passed, as Marcia said, because kid was there on her lap. Then she has to go all the way up to Mount Carmel, which could be a day, another day. It's 2 days. The kid's dead. He's cold. And Alicia just brought him back to life. Marcia thinks he's definitely the father.
I second that
I
motion.
know, you said it. But
All
we've
in
read-
favor?
We've read this story before, right? With Mesha,
With-
right?
No, Elijah. You mean bringing about having, yeah, well, I don't know. The father doesn't die. Does the father even care? I don't know. Who knows? But here's what happened. He's got a son now. Okay. By the way, go watch the Game of Thrones, the new Game of Thrones, the House of the Dragon. There's a whole bunch of stuff there about illegitimate kids and everybody knowing that they're illegitimate and not caring because at least they have a kid.
Don't give that away.
It's in the third episode, John. I'm not giving it away.
Did you watch the most recent one?
Yeah, I finished it. It was good. I liked it. I liked the last episode. But there is this issue of what happened when teens knew that their sons were not theirs. Whether they had an issue with it or they just wanted to have an heir. They didn't care. So maybe the guy didn't care. Who knows? Well, here's what happens.
He stepped down, walked once up and down the room, then mounted and bent over him. Thereupon the boy sneezed 7 times, and the boy opened his eyes. Elisha called Gehazi and said, "Call the Shunammite woman." And he called her. When she came to him, he said, "Pick up your son."
Wow. So the fact that, he comes back to life, that he actually sneezes, right? The fact that he sneezes is very unusual. That's actually not a thing that we see in the Bible a lot, is sneezing. And
Mark?
7 times. Yeah.
Could the sneezing thing have to do with demons?
Listen, anything's possible of getting something out of him. But there seems to be something that happens that he feels inside his body because he said, my head, right? So people have tried to interpret what's medically happening to this kid.
The sneeze would almost make you breathe, you sneeze and then you breathe.
Yeah, well, there definitely feels like there's something in him that he expels from out of him. That it's possible that something, came out of him. But whatever it was, he seemed to have, at least, if he wasn't dead, he was mostly dead. So I know the Princess Bride is a big movie in the Stolnitz home. So I don't know how they got him back to life, other than, again, it seems that they prayed over him. But the pray is, as some people pointed out, also might have included a little mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I don't know. Look, it says he put his mouth over his mouth, right? It says, it says exactly. But unless he really wasn't dead when he did it to him. So it says he put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes. But it definitely doesn't, it's not just the mouth, right? So, people said, well, it's a mouth-to-mouth. There. But it definitely seems to be more of an energy flow back and forth between the different places of energy. But it definitely includes a sneeze, just as it included a cry of my head at first. All those are here. And yeah,
It was a bad migraine.
really bad migraine, right? So here's what happens. We're going to finish with the end of this story, and perfect place to end.
She came and fell at his feet and bowed low to the ground. Then she picked up her son and left. Elisha returned.
No, that's
the end?
that's the end. That's the end of the story. So Alicia's journeys continue, and so do his amazing miracles. Sometimes they're done just for a handful of people. a couple people. But Elisha definitely has Elijah's powers, right? He can resurrect people. He can cause damage. He can cause rain to fall, like he did, like Elijah did with the prophets at Mount Carmel. Remember, there was no water. There'd been a famine because there was a drought. So Elijah's powers definitely are inside Elisha, and he can do these kind of miracles. He can be destructive. He can also give life. All these things. We're not done. He's going to do some miracles, and Gehazi is part of these stories. Gehazi is an important part of these stories, as we're going to see. And he becomes more and more problematic. And what's interesting, of course, is that Gehazi already has shown himself to be not quite what you'd want from an assistant. And some people say, the woman who understands this verse is the Shunammite woman who doesn't want to talk to him, who basically says, yeah, whatever, I'm going to talk to Elisha. And so she recognizes in Gehazi even that there's something off with this guy. And we're going to see why next week.
And we're still gonna come back around to Jezebel?
Yes, very good, Marcia. We have not witnessed Jezebel getting her comeuppance. We're so close, but yet she's still alive. She's still in the background. Yeah, I'm glad that Marcia didn't forget about Jezebel. She's there. We're gonna come to her soon, and we're gonna be able to see that people get their comeuppance. Man, we are so close, Marcia. We're so close to seeing her get her comeuppance.
Because we're gonna start traveling in November and December.
Well, you're going to have to join us. You're going to have to join with us in different places. But yeah, there's going to be some good Elisha stories coming up. Elisha, we actually get to learn a little bit more about him, about the way he interacts with people than Elijah to some extent. Though Elijah interacts with the power sources a little bit more than, because Elijah's big face-off is always with Ahab and Jezebel. And Elisha does more with the rank and file people. Though we did see him with the king, with Jehoshaphat and with Jehoram. So we do see him, he does interact with the kings, but we're going to see him interact also with average everyday Israelites. And we get to see him act. You know, my middle name is Elisha, but it's not because anybody thought I was going to be like Elisha. Though he always was more, to me, interesting in some ways than Elijah. He's not as famous as Elijah, but I think in some ways he's at least as interesting as Elijah. But the only reason why my name is Elisha is because it's our family name. My middle name is Ellis, and that's because my family's name was Elishawitz, was my grandfather's name. I showed you the picture of my family last week. The Elishawitzes literally means the son of Elisha. So somebody's name was Elisha in our family way back when. But Elisha was definitely not as popular as Elijah. A lot more Eliahus than Elishas. There's a lot more people named Eliyahu than Elisha. But again, it was more like that. That was because I was named after something. It was more of my mom's maiden name that I ended up with the name Elisha. But he definitely seems to have anger, a streak of anger with him as well, as we're going to see. And he has no issue. He heals people, but he has no issue also lashing out when he has to. As I said, we had 42 kids mangled by bears. He clearly has some anger issues. I don't know what to say other than we do learn about him in these next couple of chapters. All right. Thank you, Rosemary, so much for reading for us and for everybody for joining us today. And we will see you tomorrow night or next week. Bye, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.